Hi, I'm Violet. My pronouns are she, her. I have ADHD, and I believe heavily in defending the rights of Koroks in the forest.
Hi, my name's Brianne. My pronouns are she, her. I have ADHD, I'm autistic, and I secretly write Sonic Mpreg fanfiction under the name Squimmy Bingle Dinks.
Oh my god, it's been you all along.
That's me, Squimmy Bingle Dinks.
Oh, Squimmy. Oh, this brings us closer together than ever. So I've got a dumpy today. I've got to take a dumpy. I don't know
Yeah,
how
I've got a
long.
grip. It might be a while. I'm gonna grip it and rip it real quick.
Oh, okay.
There we go. I think.
Crack open a
I
cold one
think.
with
Yeah,
the
my
with the girls.
with the girls,
With the
with my
girls.
girl, with my
Hi,
girl.
that's me.
Um. Okay, yeah. What are we talking about today? What are you gonna dump about?
We're talking about Ziggler. The Legend of Ziggler, more specifically. And when I say Ziggler, you probably don't know what I'm talking about. In our household, in our home, we call Zelda Ziggler. I don't remember why. Brianne, I think, knows
Okay.
why.
Yes. Yes. So if you're just joining us on this episode, I feel like I have to explain every
Yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah,
Um, I am a polyamorous slut, and I have two partners who I love very much who live with me. One of them is Violet, who you hear, and the other is James, who is in the other room organizing Magic the Gathering cards. And when James was growing up, he had a stepdad who at one point walked in the room while James was playing one of the Legend of Zelda games and said, "What y'all doing? Y'all playing Ziggler?"
yeah.
Um, so because
Right.
his shitty ex stepdad said, "What y'all doing? Y'all playing Ziggler?" We always called it Ziggler. So the first time Violet played a Zelda game in this house, we were like Ziggler, 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 and she just didn't question it. She rolled
Yeah.
with it.
I roll with it. I hear,
Yeah.
oh, you playing Ziggler? I saw the Z word, and I was like, oh, yeah, yeah, it's Ziggler. It's Ziggler. That's what it is. It's
Yeah,
always been
so it gets
Ziggler.
called in the Lisa and Lance household. It gets called Ziggler,
Yeah,
but we're
it's
talking about Legend of Zelda.
yeah. Um, and we're talking about not just any Legend of Zelda. We're talking about the newest one, the new hotness. When this comes out, it may be not quite the new hotness, but it'll still be, I think, the most recent thing that has come out. And that is The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. And I want to talk about it because, gosh, it's just such like in terms of game design. A little bit about me: I have a degree in game design, just an associate's degree, which nowadays doesn't really matter much. But I like game design, and I find it
It's
just
more than I got in game design. I got nothing in game design.
yeah. But you have a bachelor's degree or something. You have at least a bachelor's degree in linguistics, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but you use your game design one more than I use my bachelor's in linguistics,
Oh,
let's be honest.
well, professionally, I don't know. You usually you're linked. We're getting off topic. Either way, I like games. I like game design. I like the concept of it. I've always been a fan of games. And The Legend of Zelda is one of the first games that I played pretty early on. The first one that I actually played was The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo. That was one of my first games. My first actual game was Super Mario World for the Super Nintendo. And it was originally my dad bought it for my mom, weirdly enough, for Christmas one year. And then me and I have two brothers. My brothers and I were just absolutely hooked on video games ever since. Um, but yeah, today we're talking about Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. Now, you might be listening, you might not be familiar with the Legend of Zelda at all. In which case, I can give you a little bit of an introduction. The Legend of Zelda, the original one, was just called The Legend of Zelda. And that was released in 1986 for, I believe, I think in Japan it's called the Famicom, but in the US it's called the Nintendo. And then later on we would get tons and tons and tons of sequels. And historically, The Legend of Zelda is an action adventure game. It's a franchise, but it's in general 90% of the time in history it's been a game that's about a fairly linear adventure where you're going through dungeons, you're unlocking items, you're getting things that let you go through other dungeons. You need a hook shot to complete this one dungeon, and the boss is also weak to a hook shot. Once you get that hook shot, you can enter this other dungeon that gives you the boomerang, and then the boomerang lets you get through that dungeon to defeat the boss who's weak to the boomerang, and then so on and so forth till you have a whole arsenal of items, and then you go beat the boss. That is the Zelda formula, basically. At least it has been up until The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild came out. I believe 2017, if I recall correctly, a few years ago. And it really broke the Legend of Zelda format kind of wide open because they said, we're going to do an open world game. And really, pioneering new stuff in The Legend of Zelda is not new for them. The Legend of Zelda games actually pioneered a ton of features that have become standards in the video game industry. The original Legend of Zelda was the first console game with a save function. Fun fact.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was the first game that you could ever save your game and then come back to it later. So you could stop playing, come back later.
And I actually learned recently that the first Legend of Zelda game, when people were testing it, even though it was fairly linear, I learned that I guess a lot of the test players didn't quite know what to do next because in context of the games before that were just about scoring getting a higher score and going in a line. It was the most open of worlds that had been on a console game to that point, even though it was linear.
Exactly. And the whole concept of the game, I believe, came from Shigeru Miyamoto and his experiences as a young kid in Japan, just exploring the woods. It's Mario's dad. But yeah, the concept came from his adventures just exploring the woods around his home in Japan, which I think is super cool. But yeah, the original Zelda, there's no scoring system. Either you beat it or you don't, really. And it did have the save and resume function, which at the time, obviously games are designed to be real fucking hard because we're just for the first time stepping out of the arcade era, the quarter eater kind of, we need to make it super hard so no one can beat it, so it eats tons of money and pays for itself kind of era. We weren't quite out of that yet, and so even though games were on console, that was the difficulty expected of a lot of games, and a lot of games on the Super Nintendo, etc., were just straight like arcade games that had been ported, or converted over in some form. But yeah, so The Legend of Zelda not only pioneered saving in games, which is like something that we like kind of assume almost all games are going to have. If a game doesn't have a save function nowadays, or at least like some kind of checkpoint function, but specifically saving is what Zelda pioneered. We kind of like are like, oh my god, this game is incredibly hard. But The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, for the Nintendo 64, I forget the year, I think it was like 1996, 97, I don't remember. But either way.
I think it was 97.
That sounds right.
I'm not a Ziggler expert, but I got Nintendo 64. It was the first game console I actually owned.
Heck yeah.
And I think that was Crimbo 97.
That sounds about right. Yeah. It may have been a bit later, but I just remember that being a formative game of my childhood also. The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, do you want to try and guess what they introduced in that game? And it's something to me that I was like, it was introduced there? I could have sworn it was in something before, but it wasn't. Do you have any idea? Take a guess if you want to.
Nudity.
It did well. I don't think it had nudity, to be fully honest. But
I don't know. I don't. In full disclosure for everyone here, I have tried to play a few Zelda games. It's not my thing. I get why it's popular. It's just not my thing. So I'm going to be learning with anyone else who doesn't know about Zelda either.
Yeah. Well, while I was playing Zelda, you were studying the horse.
I was studying the horse, and also my first games on the N64. I was an only child, so I had many games, but I had Mario Kart and GoldenEye.
Oh yeah, I mean those are good ones to have if you're gonna have games. Honestly.
Yeah.
Those are really good ones. So.
So if it didn't introduce nudity, what did it introduce?
The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time introduced a targeting system that let the player lock the camera onto an enemy or a friendly NPC, which simplified 3D combat. Because previously, if you had a 3D game, you just had to like aim yourself at the enemy and swing and hope you kind of hit. But Legend of Zelda, in converting from the 2D format that they had going into 3D, they realized it was really fucking hard to actually hit the enemies that were jumping around and moving around so much. and it was frustrating, and it distracted from the feeling of being a hero that is, a famed swordsman that's like so good at
If you
combat.
keep fucking up,
Yeah,
repeatedly,
exactly.
yeah.
So the really genius thing that they introduced was the lock-on targeting system, which is ubiquitous in so many third-person games now. Because in first person, right, it's fairly easy to see what you're looking at because it's right in the middle of the screen. Doom,
Like
etc. You don't
like
need to lock
Call
on
of
in
Duty.
Doom. Yeah,
Call of Duty Shoot a Man.
yeah. Call of Duty, shoot a man, bang bang, kill a guy. That game. You have a reticle essentially in the middle of the screen. You don't need to lock on. This part of the skill element is aiming correctly at the enemy. In third person, your camera, your view is behind the actual thing doing the action. Link in this case, the main character, and it's really hard to hit enemies sometimes in that vibe. I don't know if any of you here have ever played a game that's third person but doesn't have lock on. You're gonna whiff a lot. That's just like really, and they didn't really like the idea of having Link just kind of whiff his sword a lot. So they made it so you could they called it Z targeting because you press the Z button on the weird N64 controller to lock onto an enemy, and you can also use it to lock onto friendly NPCs to talk to them easier or from a distance, which is super super clever. And that is something that is so ubiquitous in games now, is having a lock on. I mean, everything all the way from Elden Ring has a lock on now. If it's a third person adventure game, it probably has a lock on. And so Legend of Zelda is no stranger to like pioneering things, right? Now, when we get to Breath of the Wild in 2017, this was their first foray into open world games. Legend of Zelda historically is a linear game. You go and you do things in a certain order, and then you beat the boss, and then you're done. Breath of the Wild totally flipped that on its head by saying, here's this massive open world. You have all of Hyrule up and down at your disposal, and the only edges that you cannot traverse outside of are literally the bounds of the world of Hyrule. And outside of that, that's it. Like, go wherever you want. And that comes with so many interesting game design challenges. And in my research, I've been having a fucking amazing time playing Tears of the Kingdom, and the level design and the way the world is designed is so unlike any other open world game I've ever played. And obviously, if you've seen any video of Tears of the Kingdom, it's a game where you have not only the land of Hyrule, you have the Sky Islands above Hyrule, and minor spoiler alert here, you can actually go underground into I think it's called the Underdark or something. Not the Underdark, that's a D&D thing. The depths, that's what it's called. You can go down into the depths, which is like as far below Hyrule as the Sky Islands are above Hyrule, which is just a shocking amount of game to make work. But Breath of the Wild, it was just one realm essentially that you're in. Breath of the Wild, they were still thinking of it from a view of, okay, we need to make this open world. How do we kind of have it feel like Zelda, that linear game, while being open world? That was the challenge that they had to do, because obviously if you just do it, if you do it Skyrim style, where it's just there's a bunch of towns, do whatever you want, you're going to run into the issue of kind of aimless wandering for eternity, and then the main plot never happens, and it stops kind of feeling like a Zelda game, and it starts feeling like Skyrim. So how did the developers tackle that? Well,
It's also interesting that I feel like
Pokemon
basically went through. I feel like Pokemon basically went through the same open world testing thing too, where they were like, "This is a little open. You still have to go to things in this order at first." And now we have Scarlet and Violet, where it's like, literally go wherever you want. Here's a fucking crater.
Yeah, definitely. And like, I would say that Tears of the Kingdom, I would say games like Scarlet and Violet, I don't think they fully succeed at doing that. I think they do succeed at feeling like a Pokemon game, but I don't think they quite nailed the open world stuff.
Yeah, which I imagine is harder. I think it's harder with the Pokemon formula, but
it really, really is. It very much is so, because that's not just a linear game. That is a gated open world game, weirdly enough. Like, as you go through layers of the game, you can go back to old places further, and you could do that with Zelda games, sure. But it was much more gated in Pokemon, and I feel like you could do something with Pokemon, but it's getting off to a bit of a tangent here. But Pokemon, really, the thing that holds them back is the size of their studio. I believe the company Niantic is the company that makes Pokemon, and they have so much less resources than the actual like production team at Nintendo themselves. And because it is kind of more limited to Niantic, they just don't have the same like people and same resources that Legend of Zelda and Mario do, which kind of can explain a lot of the criticism that Scarlet and Violet has faced.
I'll go help them.
Yeah, no, fuck, I'll go help them. Y'all want to pay me? Put me on the.
I'll go
Put
help
me on
them.
the
I
payroll.
don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing, but
Well, you'll be the lead Pokemon designer, and they're all dogs.
yeah, like my team.
What's our next dog
Anyway,
Pokemon? Sorry.
Anyway,
So,
sorry, I got off on a tangent.
oh, you're good. You're good. So, shortly after Breath of the Wild came out, there was a conference, CEDEC. I literally was having trouble finding what that stood for, to be honest. It's some conference, not particularly relevant. Either way, it was a conference in Japan, I believe, that was given. This was a conference where they had the director of Breath of the Wild, Hidemaru Fujibayashi, and the senior lead artist, Makoto Yonezu. They had both of those people on the stage to talk about the art direction and the design challenges that they faced in Breath of the Wild. And basically what they talked about is the first kind of rendition of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. It was straight up open world. They had these big towers. If you've ever seen Breath of the Wild, there's these big towers that you have to go to unlock parts of the map. And you go to those and it'll tell you where these different shrines are and stuff like that. It lets you kind of unlock more of the world as you go to them. And in the first kind of beta testing of Breath of the Wild, what ended up happening would people that were used to playing Zelda would see this tower and go, oh, that's where I'm supposed to go. And then they would just go there and then do that. And then from that tower, they see another tower, and then they go from that tower to the next tower, and they would bypass like 90% of the content of the game, right? And so what they ended up doing was they wanted to prevent people from taking straight lines from things. And so they decided to make the terrain more vertical, more hilly, more mountainous. And so they introduced kind of a concept or a method of like open world design that they were using called field triangle law. And I apologize, that may not be proper translation. That is Google Translate helping me out here. But it was from Japanese to English. Field triangle law. And the idea behind the field triangle law, or the level design here, is that a trick to design terrain so that it is entertaining to players is you put triangle shaped like features, mountains, hills, whatever, all around. And what you do is, and this is what helped them kind of keep players from going in quite a straight line, is you put something interesting at the top of that triangle, the top of the mountain on the horizon, if you can imagine that. But then you also put paths and other interesting things, other triangles on the other side of it. And so you can either choose, I want to climb this mountain, or I can go around this mountain, and I know there's going to be more stuff waiting for me, because just moving around the side of that mountain, more things will pop up on the horizon as the mountain edge dips down in your view, right? And so that kind of revealing the scenery
makes you do a zigzag instead of...
Yeah, exactly. It's giving you can go straight to the tower, but once you get there, you're going to see not only other towers, you're going to see other paths to get there that are not linear, that may have other interesting things, and if you choose not to go up this particular hill, go in between it, for example, that is you're zigging and zagging, you're seeing other content that's off the beaten path, and this whole concept, the small triangles, which are things like a tree across the road. Triangle in this context meaning just some obstacle, really. It doesn't necessarily have to be triangular, but a lot of the time in the game concept, it was a hill or a mountain. And so, if let's say you're walking across the main path to the next tower, and there's a giant boulder in the way or a huge enemy camp.
All triangle.
It's all triangles, right? So let's say you come across a camp of really sharp looking triangles and you're like, no thanks. You go around that, and as you're going around that triangle, it reveals off in the distance other triangles with interesting things at the top. And if you go around
Boobs.
it, there's going to be more other interesting things. Boobs, yeah. And so that is kind of triangles and boobs. That's what Breath of the Wild is. It's a game about triangles and boobs. They basically kind of broke concepts down into basic shapes. There's like they have squares and things, and there was a whole conference about it that people kind of found and put into an article and translated. But yeah, they tried to use this concept of what you can see right in front of you, but you can also recognize that things are being obscured by the thing in front of you, and you want to know what's on the other side. And using that concept is how they made Breath of the Wild more interesting. Instead of having a clear linear path between tower to tower, they would put obstacles between the towers. So at any given time, you could probably only maybe see one tower, and even then, you may not be able to see any objectives necessarily. And you may not even be able to see a path. And so it's up to you to kind of figure out a way to go to find a new guiding line, essentially. But triangles especially were used a lot in concepts because they're highly effective at guiding the line of sight to like the tip of it, like pyramids.
Just the tip.
Just the tip, exactly. And it really kind of I have linked in my my show notes here. I could go on about this whole thing.
Linked.
I have linked in my show notes this article. You will need to like Google translate it from Japanese into English, but it's linked in there.
Unless you speak Japanese.
Unless you speak Japanese, yeah, obviously. But yeah, if you speak Japanese, you won't need to translate it. But they have all these different pictures and concepts and stuff talking about how they made Breath of the Wild work, and obviously Breath of the Wild was a huge success. So you ask yourself, all right, Tears of the Kingdom, how are you going to top that, right? So in Tears of the Kingdom, they didn't remove the world that they created in Breath of the Wild. They just modified it for the context of the game, which I think is super interesting.
And
also
dogs. Watching you play has been fun because there's random dogs.
Yeah, there is. All the stables have dogs at them, and they're really nice. But I think that was also in Breath of the Wild, though. I'm not sure. I hope so. God, I hope so. But yeah, so like, how do you improve upon the success of an open world game that Breath of the Wild was? Well, Tears of the Kingdom clearly did it, because I don't know if you've seen the reviews of Tears of the Kingdom. But Open Critic, which is basically an aggregate score amongst several different like review companies, it's at a 97%.
Wow.
Yeah. So IGN 10 out of 10, Metro Game Central 10 out of 10, Destructoid 10 out of 10, GameSpot 10 out of 10, Game Informer 9.8 out of 10, Easy Allies, I don't know them, 9.5 out of 10, Games Radar 4.5 out of 5. Eurogamer 4.5 out of 5. Like, really, and there's more, and there's like something like over 140 reviews here from different critic sources, and they all average out to 97%. That is one of the highest like reviewed games of all time. It is shockingly high and shockingly good. And so the other thing about Tears of the Kingdom, right? Not only do they have to improve upon Breath of the Wild, they have to do it in 5 years. Now, that might sound like a lot of time, but in game design terms for a AAA game, that is not a lot of time. Especially when you look at what Tears of the Kingdom lets you do. I've already mentioned, right? There's the Sky Islands that have now appeared over Hyrule that you can access. You've got the land of Hyrule itself, and then you have these chasms all over Hyrule that drop you down into the depths, and the depths are essentially...
They look like booty holes.
They do. They look like big red achy booty holes, and it's spooky. It's spooky when you jump in it because you fall really far.
It's a spooky hole.
Yeah, it's a spooky hole. And part of the way that Tears of the Kingdom came about in like the idea of we want to triple the verticality of this game and then some, was weirdly enough speed running Tears of the Kingdom. Breath of the Wild. I mean, in Breath of the Wild, you had an item called a glider, And basically, if you jump off of something really high and press the jump button again, you'll pull out a glider that'll let you literally glide forward. And it just very slowly drains your stamina because you can't hang on to it forever. And you'll just glide forward. And it allows for so many traversal options that are really fun and interesting. And like, I don't know about you, any game where you can glide like around a huge environment, I've just found that, I don't know why, it's like shaking keys to a baby for me. I don't know why, I just love it. But like being able to like kind of like a bird, I'm gonna soar across this huge beautiful landscape. That was something that Breath of the Wild did amazing. And what they found in Breath of the Wild speed running, a lot of these tricks involved getting the player really super high up in the air by, using glitches and things like that to bounce super high in the air, and then you would just glide super super far across the map. And that was so much fun for people, not only speedrunners but people that were just doing this casually, because you could get up really high and it was cool to just see all of Hyrule down below. And that concept of how fun that was, they were basically like, all right, let's take that into Tears of the Kingdom and make it like work for that. Like in Breath of the Wild, if you want to get up like 100 feet in the air, that's a lot. That's difficult. There's an ability you can get in Breath of the Wild called Rivali's Gale that shoots you high up in the air, and then you can glide away. But that's it. Like that's really the only way to get super high up, aside from like creative uses of Octorok balloons. Like it's not easy. And by design, there's like several bosses and like stages in Breath of the Wild where the whole idea is that you can't do that yet because you can't get up very high. You don't have Rivali's Gale yet. You can't get up there. And in fact, it was such a grounded game that there's a point where there's a dungeon that's literally flying around a city, and one person who is like a bird person is like, I'm gonna fly up there. You have no way of getting up there on your own. Sorry, bye. And you have to literally like talk to another person to get the ability to get up there. But there are ways, using glitches and weird techniques and things like that, that you can try and get up there. And the developers were like, so there's no way they could get this high up in the game. You literally cannot land on that dungeon. It's intangible. It has no collision in the game.
God.
Yeah. So it was just like a lot of players, like they saw so many players trying to get vertical and do these massive jumps and glide across the entire map and all this crazy stuff. And they said, let's do that bigger. And the wild thing is, in order to do that, they did that with simplicity, which sounds kind of weird. They took away the abilities that you have in Breath of the Wild, which is, magnesis and cryonis and all of these things. You could make like magic bombs appear out of thin air, essentially. You could like move metallic stuff around with magnesis. There was like an ice power where you could make ice platforms. They took all of that away, and they said, let's give the player different tools that are much more free form. And they took a lot of notes from, in my opinion, I think they took a lot of notes from the early games like System Shock, if you're familiar at all.
No idea.
So System Shock was an early like RPG kind of first-person adventure RPG shooter sort of kind of game. It had a whole lot of things going on. It was a really cool game. But the main thing about it that it makes it kind of historic is that in System Shock, right, true to the name, the game was programmed not with like, you do this and then this happens kind of stuff, like press the button and then the door opens. It was more of a, you have this battery tool that lets you electrify stuff, and there's a puddle of water connected to this computer that you need to turn off. You just have to figure out some way using the systems available to you of electricity and water and conductivity to affect these other systems. And it's like they would just give you a goal and a series of systems that are interconnected in nebulous ways and leave the solutions, the specific solutions, up to you. So, let's say in System Shock, hypothetically, there's a thing you need to light on fire, or no, rather, there's a button you need to press or something, right? Instead of having to like find a specific route into that room to press the button, you might like, find something you can slip through a bar in a window and then like poke the button through the window with it. And because it doesn't matter that...
Sorry, I'm just realizing, so simplifying it would mean there'd be these basic kind of laws of physics in the game that
Exactly.
as long as you followed these laws of physics in the game to accomplish the thing with what you have handed to you, you can do it,
Exactly. Yeah.
which gives you so many more options. And it's simplified, but it is more complex in general because those rules have
Yes.
to apply to everything in the game, right? Like you have to consider
Exactly.
that in everything you're designing.
Yeah, it is a way of programming that is foreign to a lot of game designers, but it's really, it can be explained as simple as like, if your goal is to press a button, right? But your goal in a game is to press a button, right? But really, what your goal is, if you think about it, is to walk up to that door and press the A button on your controller, which makes your character then do an animation where they press the button, right?
And instead it's you need to have a pressure applied to this one
Exactly.
thing from
Exactly.
anything you have that can apply pressure, whether or not it's your character's hand or a stick or throwing something
Exactly.
or yeah.
And that is a game design system. That's where you have it, you don't have things programmed to happen. You don't have, press A to grieve, or nonsense like that. It's here are the bounds of the game. Here is a thing that does this. Here's a thing that does that. Here's your task. Figure it out. And
Which is
that
even more
is,
open world.
yeah, exactly. System Shock was not an open world game. It was a linear game, but it worked by those rules where there was almost limitless ways to do certain tasks because of the systems that were in place. And Tears of the Kingdom, they so in Breath of the Wild there was still a lot of the no, you have to do X before you can do Z kind of thing. There was a lot of that. Your goal is to get up here, and what they really mean is you have to get this one ability, not just get up here. Breath of the Wild says no. You can your goal is to get here, and I don't give a fuck how you do it. And it's so good. It is amazing. Like the abilities that they give you are so simple and really so like oh my gosh, I could gush about this for a while, and I know that's the whole point of this, but okay.
Yeah.
So Breath of the Wild was good. Tears of the Kingdom, similar to it, does not overthink its open world system design, and it doesn't really force the player to learn, any confusing tools or anything like that. Like figure out how this ability works, and like there's so many games I've played where like, oh, I have this ability that like BioShock, I have an ability to psychokinetically shove things forward. But if I need to push a button on the other side of the room, I do have to walk up and press A. It's like,
Oh, that's wild.
yeah,
Yeah.
stuff like that. And Bioshock was not quite as good as System Shock in that regard, but Tears of the Kingdom, absolutely. There's going to be like pretty notable spoilers from this point on, since it is a new game. I do want to mention that. At one point, there is a fire temple, and you're supposed to use these mine carts. They're set up all over the place to move back and forth between these different tiers and levels. But also, you can just produce a giant spring and just jump on the spring. And like you can also you could make a flying motorcycle. You could throw a pine cone on the ground, and because you're in a hot environment at the fire temple, it instantly explodes, and Hylian pine cones make an upward draft when they explode or get exposed to heat, so you use that to fly up to the next level. I mean, there's so
Whoa.
many ways. So the basic tools, right, backing up a little bit, the basic tools that Tears of the Kingdom gives you, first off, you have your inventory, right? It's simple, and it's virtually unlimited, while your weapons and equipment are not. Your materials, you can have essentially as much of a material nearly as you want.
Like
And then
800 pine cones.
you could have 999 pine cones, in fact.
Oh.
Yeah. And if you want to collect a bunch of those so you can just like fly into like help you get upward mobility in certain areas, you can totally do that. Armor is simplified in that it is just 3 articles of clothing: headpiece, chest piece, leg piece, with
I've
combined
enjoyed
effects.
watching you change those outfits around too because they make Link such a little slut.
Oh, he's a real, they should have called him a twink, really. Like, he's very much a twink. There's so many outfits
Very,
that are like, I'm going to show
very
the belly
much.
button here.
I'm half of them look like Burning Man costumes.
Yeah, no, there's like at least 3 distinct different crop tops that Link wears.
I love it.
It's
I love
it's
it.
amazing. But it's simple, right? The armor, it's just 3 pieces of clothing that you equip. Any 3 pieces, and that's it. They all have their bonuses and a defense rating, and you don't have to worry too much about like, if you have all the pieces of a set equipped, you get a special bonus for certain sets. There's some sets that like the bonus is that they have a lot of defense. Like it's just very straightforward. Just equip the armor that does what you want it to do, and then don't worry about it. Oh yeah, so cooking is very simplified also. You can produce meals to help restore your health or give yourself a buff. It's just put 5 things in a pot and you get a meal out. It might be bad, it might be good, but that's it. It's very simple. You don't have to worry about it. You can just be creative with it. Fast travel in both games, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, is unlocked almost immediately. And the game does not tell you where you can and can't go or what you can't do. Non-linear narrative design does not really work in every context, but it does it so right here. It gives you really an unmatched sense of freedom in Tears of the Kingdom that other games really just don't quite grab, without making you feel like you're playing the wrong way. There is no wrong way to play Tears of the Kingdom, which is, I've never seen that in a game before. That is amazing to me. The new crafting system is fantastic. So the core abilities, I should back up a little bit. You have, instead of magnesis and all that, in Tears of the Kingdom, you have something called Ultra Hand, which lets you grab objects, anything that is a physics object, right? Not nailed down, you can pick up and move around and attach them to other objects. And that lets you do just wild stuff like that right there. The first thing I built with Ultra Hand was just like 10 boards end to end to end, and I made a massive bridge to walk across a huge gap that I guess technically I wasn't supposed to get across, but there's no wrong way to play. And so there was just a treasure chest over there, and I got it and opened it, and I was like, I'm like, I wasn't supposed to be here yet. No, I was. There's no intended way for me to get there. And it was
no
so
rules,
hard
just
to
right off back.
Yeah. It was just so hard to wrap my mind around the idea that there is no wrong way to do this. And I kept feeling they give you so many tools that make you feel like, surely I'm not allowed to do this. There's one ability called Ascend. It literally just, within a certain height above you, if there is something flat-ish above you, you can just go through it.
You just pride your way through.
Yeah, you just kitty pride your way through. So like if there's a ceiling 10 feet above you, you just leap up through it and you pop out on the surface of whatever's above it. And it doesn't matter how deep that distance is. It doesn't matter. And it feels like cheating when you are like 300 meters underground in a cave and you're like, I want to be out of here now. Boop, just pop out onto the surface. So there's Ascend, which lets you just move through anything above you, essentially. And you can do that. You can do so many wild things with that. You could literally, like, there's a thing falling on your head. No, I'm going to ascend through it. Like, just pop out on top of it. It doesn't matter if it's moving. It's just, if there's a thing above you, you move through it. And there's another ability called Stasis that lets you pause time for a moment. You select an object that is a physics object of some kind. And then it just reverses time for that object, right? That might sound a little complex, but it really is as simple as it sounds. Let's say somebody threw a rock at you. You can use stasis and say, no, the rock is coming back at you. It's being unthrown at you and hits you in the face.
I've seen you do that to
exactly
critters before.
And the name of the one I just said, Stasis. Ascend, Ultra Hand, Stasis. You've got one more ability called Fuse, which lets you essentially, let's say you have a really shitty stick and you find that you need to break something or break something's face with it. You can take that shitty stick and attach a boulder to it, and it won't last very long, but now you have a formidable weapon. And later on in the game, let's say you have, a really corroded old rusty broadsword. You can take an enemy's horn that you found on the ground after beating an enemy and attach that to the weapon. And now, let's say it's a Lizalfos horn. You have a Lizalfos horn sword, which is just fucking cool. And one of the ways they encouraged people to do that was by making it so all the weapons in the overworld are just like rusted and degraded and they don't do much damage anymore. So you fuse stuff to them to improve their damage and essentially replace the blade, which I think is really, really cool. But those are the 4 main abilities. There's a couple other things like you get like a camera and whatnot, but those are the core things. And
I've
you
seen
can
use the camera to take good pictures of horses and dogs.
Yeah. Yeah, there's just like in the previous game, there's a picture function where you're trying to fill out a whole compendium of pictures of all the creatures of Hyrule and everything, and that's just nice. And it's all been compiled into one device in this game called the Purapad. Pura being an inventor in the game. But yeah, it's really nice. But those core three, Fuse is nice for combat, but it doesn't really come into play in the construction and movement of the world, kind of. But Ascend, Ultra Hand, and Stasis, you can use all three of those in some wild ways that feel super unintended. I can't tell you how many videos I've seen online of people going, the devs never thought I'd do this, and then they do something that the devs absolutely thought you would do. Like,
Yeah.
so you can, for example,
It's space. So I like that it's basically like Link has these skills, and your ability to use lateral thinking determines how creative you can get.
exactly.
And it's like some of these people are like, I made the slightest lateral move, suck my butt, devs. And it's like, no,
Yeah.
they wanted you to do that.
Yeah. The only thing I've seen people do that I don't think was intended by the devs is if you build a contraption just right, you can actually pick up certain NPCs and move them away from where they're supposed to be. I don't think you're supposed to do that one, but like everything else is intended. And right, so when it comes to Ultra Hand, the stasis ability and the Ascend, you can, if you want to, right, you can Ultra Hand an object. Let's say you have a box, right? You Ultra Hand it up into the air, hold it there for a few moments, and then let it fall back to the ground. You climb on top of the box, and then you use stasis on the box to reverse time, so it reverses that motion you just did of floating it up into the air. So now you've just lifted yourself up on top of the box that you just lifted with Ultra Hand, and now you're close enough to the ceiling above you to ascend through that. And it's this beautiful harmony of these abilities that is just so simple, but you can do so much with them. And really the thing about these, in most games, if they were going to give you abilities like these, they would be very limited where you can use them, right? I've seen games where it's like, oh, you have this ability where you can climb on walls now, but only walls that have this one specific texture on them or image or something. And it's like, no, that's not cool. That's not an ability. That's a thing I can do on this wall. Like, that's not an ability. But Tears of the Kingdom says, no, if there's something above you, even if you yeeted it there, you can ascend through it. You can you can literally...
It's big macro, like big laws of physics that are so broad and overarching instead of deliberate ones. That's really cool.
I've seen videos of people doing a thing where using fusion, right? They pull out an arrow with their bow. They fuse a piece of wood from the inventory, like for lighting a fire, a piece of wood onto the arrow. They shoot the arrow across a gap, right? And then once the arrow hits the other side and falls to the ground, it breaks off of that piece of wood. And then they use stasis on the piece of wood to bring it back to where they fired it from. And then they attach something else to that piece of wood, like a platform, stand on the platform. They attach it using Ultra Hand. They stand on the platform. They reverse time again to go back to the original trajectory and get them across a huge gap. So they're using these wild, simple tools to essentially shoot themselves across a gap with a bow and arrow, which is just wild. And I have not even gotten into the elemental system. Yeah, there's a whole thing there. Basically, they're instead of having bomb arrows or fire arrows or whatever, you have fire fruits and bomb flowers, and you have ice fruits and shock fruits and stuff like that do very similar things. But you can, because they are materials, you don't just have to use them as arrow fodder. Essentially, you can cook shock fruit into a meal that will increase your electric damage when you attack.
Oh.
Yeah, you can attach it to the end of an arrow and shoot it into something to electrocute it. You can also attach it to your shield so that when something hits your shield, it electrocutes them. I mean,
it's wild.
It's all of these systems. You can attach a splash fruit, which covers things in water. Not terribly useful, right? How useful could that be? You attach splash fruit to an arrow, shoot it onto an enemy, and then you just throw a shock fruit onto them. And because they're wet,
Oh.
it makes an electrical area, like an explosion of electricity around them, and shocks all the nearby enemies. These systems are wild. Like, you can literally, I mean, it is, anytime I'm trying to do something and I think there's no way this could work, it does. Like, so with fuse, you can fuse things to your weapon or to your shield or to an arrow. Shield fusions get particularly wild, right? There are zoanite devices. Zoanite being like the resources that these ancient Hylian sky people use to build their society. There's rockets and wheels and flamethrowers and all sort batteries and whatnot. All of these things that you can use to build whatever you want. They've given you these lovely toy chests all over the world to build your things, and all of them can be fused to your shield. If it's a thing that can be picked up and moved around, 99% of the time you can fuse it to a shield or a weapon or something. So let's say you have a spring, like I mentioned at the fire temple. I could just fuse that to my shield and then do what they call a shield jump, where you jump and essentially like surf on your shield.
Oh, an e-spring spring.
Yeah, and the spring is on your shield, so you boing, bounce off the spring into the air. You can attach a rocket to your shield and let it carry you up into the air, or you could do a shield slide and essentially rocket skateboard forward. You can attach a minecart to your shield and ride it, like skateboard on this minecart that you've attached to your shield on a rail. You can take a frozen piece of meat and fuse it to your shield and it acts like you're sliding. Yeah, you can shield slide on a frozen piece of meat attached to your shield as if you were riding on an ice cube. Like, it's fucking incredible what they came up with. You can take mushrooms and attach them to your shield and make it so when you parry...
I can also take mushrooms.
Yeah, you can take mushrooms and get super fucking high. You can take mushrooms and attach them to your shield, and then when you parry an enemy's attack, it's considered bouncy, and the mushroom goes boing and bounces the enemy away.
Oh my god, that's adorable.
Yeah, and disarms them if they hit your shield with it. Like,
so
it's
adorable.
So... Yeah, there's like at one point in the Gerudo town, there's like these like sand seal plushies. There's like little plushies of the princess's favorite sand seals that she likes to ride around the desert. And you can attach those to your weapons or shield to make them bouncy. And if you, like, say you have like a two-handed club and you attach a plushie to it, you hit an enemy and they just go flying. It doesn't do a ton of damage, but it knocks them halfway across the map.
Well, you fuck them up with a squishmallow, basically.
You can absolutely fuck them up with a squishmallow. And the wild thing is that because of the systems that are in place, and the rules that have been set by the game, this is a valid way to fight. You can literally say, oh, you're a silver bokoblin that's about to beat my fucking face in with a single hit. I'm going to bounce you into a puddle of water and you can't swim and you're dead. Like, just that easy. I don't have to deal 500 damage or whatever to you. I can just bounce you into some water with my bouncy hammer. The systems that they've given people to make the open world systems work are just amazing. And all of this was done in 5 years. Like, if you said to a game design studio, you have 5 years to make a game that lets you fuse any two objects together. They all have their own physics properties and rules. You have, they all have to work harmoniously with each other. And it's a AAA Nintendo game, so there needs to be almost no bugs. Most studios would be like, no, that's not enough time. This is a wild
Just the
system.
idea that everything down to a frozen piece of meat has to have these certain physics properties and all of these things that are just inherent to that down to the frozen piece of meat. That is so much detail.
It's so much detail. Like, if you take out a piece of meat and lay it on the ground in a freezing area, and it's particular, like, if it's cold, it'll take a little while, but it will freeze and you will have frozen meat in your inventory when you pick it back up. And if it's really, really cold, you'll drop it on the ground and it'll immediately freeze. If you are in a cold environment and you're holding a torch, it'll keep you just a little bit warmer.
That's
like,
so much detail.
Yeah, so much. These systems are amazing. And that, I think, is a huge part of why Tears of the Kingdom is so amazing. It's It's a game that never ever, as much as possible, it tries to tell the player yes every single time, and it never ever says no. You can't. You just can't do that. And there's so many times where the game is like, surely the game won't let me do this, and it does. Gosh, I could keep thinking of examples. There's so many things like, and the game encourages you to use these systems. There's new enemies in Tears of the Kingdom called Gibdos that are incredibly tough. They take like no damage, but if you use elemental damage on them, it like removes their armor. They're like weird, decayed, fleshy. They're like zombies basically, and it removes their like zombie coating, and then they're just a skeleton. And now they're easy to beat. Um, and like the thing that really just shocks me, uh, in terms of like the system design, is that there are shrines in the game, which are essentially, it's an enclosed puzzle room basically, and you're trying to solve whatever the puzzle is. If you're clever enough with that lateral thinking, you can just bypass almost all the puzzles in the game. There's like a puzzle where you have to use a mirror object, and you have to catch this light beam that's coming around and reflect it onto this one like light sensor. Or you can just throw a dazzle fruit at it, which it's a fruit that explodes into a bunch of light to like stun enemies. It's generating light. And so
I'm
if
a
you throw it
dazzle
at the
fruit.
light sensor, huh?
I'm a dazzle fruit.
You're a dazzle fruit. You're just filled with light and love, and I love you.
But that's amazing. I would like
Yeah.
that makes me more interested as someone who like my issue with playing Zelda was always like I don't know that I ever saw as like I don't get what I'm supposed to do with this fucking puzzle. And I would get
Yeah.
frustrated almost immediately going, "What do you want me to do here?"
Yeah.
But if I can just figure
Hmm.
out a way around it, I think I'd be much more interested.
Yeah. That is the thing. There's no wrong answer. Like, there's puzzles that I walked into where I was just like, whew, the intended way here. I think I see what the intended way is here, and it looks like a lot. I kind of don't feel like it. I am just going to like put a rocket on my shield and just yeet myself into the air and glide over everything. Just do that, and it works. Let's say you've got this really annoying puzzle that you're just having a hard time solving, and it centers around trying to get some boulder or big object to collide with this target thing. You can just shoot a bomb at it. Just shoot a bomb at it. If you're getting annoyed with it, just shoot a bomb at it, move on. They've given you tools to bypass the puzzles that are annoying you, which I think is so amazing. Like, I could see myself getting frustrated with a puzzle and going, ugh, I'm just going to yeet a bomb at it. And then, like, in 99% of video games, that would not work. That's not the way you solve the
Yeah.
puzzle. But in Tears of the Kingdom, they said, yes, you can yeet it's just force. You need to apply force to this object, not the ball, not the key or whatever. You just need to hit this thing really hard in some way. And there's a way we've shown you can do it, but you can also just yeet a bomb at it. And I think
Yeah.
that is beautiful. You know, gosh, I have more. So 5 years to develop this game. Also, it's on the Nintendo Switch, which is not the most powerful console, like straight up. They have done so many things from a game design perspective to make the game run pretty much flawlessly. Um, and it looks beautiful. Like, it looks really fucking good. So they picked a style and they just stuck with the style, and that has worked so well for them over the years in terms of like making the game work. And the fact that they have all of these systems crammed into the game, and like all of these abilities, like you can combine like with Ultra Hand up to 21 objects together to make like whatever. I spent like an hour and a half the other day just trying to build essentially a mech suit, which is just a ridiculous thing to try and build in a game like Zelda. But I've seen people like build even more wild stuff. Like I've seen people build like they've given you tools to like have things that automatically target enemies. People have built tanks. They've built like hover assault platforms. It's like a thing that you just drop it on the ground and then hit it, and it flies up into the air and attacks the enemies for you until they're dead or you run out of battery. And like the thing that makes all of this even more amazing is that partway through the game, you unlock an ability called auto build, which whenever you build something with Ultra Hand, it remembers every step, every addition of a thing to it. And so when you get a thing that you really like, you can just save that. And if you ever have those parts again, you can just have the game build it for you. So it's not tedious. And if you don't have those parts available, you can spend this resource Zoanite to just build it using that resource. So like I could be, at the fire temple, I want to get up really high. I could just like use some Zoanite and spawn in my like hover bike design that I've been working on and just fly up to the top of the temple if I want to. The takeaway from a game design perspective from Tears of the Kingdom is that it is amazing at rewarding curiosity, and it will never ever punish you for just trying something weird. There are some like areas of the game where it says, hey, I'm trying to teach you something, and I am going to limit your capabilities in this instance because of that. Like there's parts of the game where, the puzzle here is to get up into this thing, but I can just ascend up into it because I'm thinking, there's so many parts where I just forget about ascend, by the way. Like I forget that I can just yeet myself up into the whatever's above me. And that like lets me like really speed run a lot of puzzles. But there's also times where like the bottoms of all of these platforms are slanted at 45-degree angles. So I can't ascend through them because the devs are trying to teach me how to get up here without ascend, which is just like very nice. And almost all of this happens within shrines. So it's like, even if you don't like, you can always just come back to a shrine, right? It's a fast travel point. When you get to a shrine, it becomes a fast travel point. You don't have to complete it for that to happen. You're there and it's a fast travel point. Yeah, you just have to reach it and that's it. And you don't even have to complete it. If you don't like what the game is trying to force you to do in a shrine where it is more constrained, you don't have to worry about it. Just come back later. You don't even have to do that one to beat the game. There's hundreds of shrines. So like Tears of the Kingdom is just, it's a master class in rewarding creativity from a game design perspective. It is a masterpiece of systems design. It is a beautiful game on limited hardware that is getting kind of old. I don't know if there's going to be like a Breath of the Wild or Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom 2 or whatever the next game is. But little bit of numbers. The game in the first 3 days it was released, I believe. Yeah. Tears of the Kingdom sold over 2.24 million copies within its first 3 days of release in Japan, which is unfathomable sales. And according to a Japanese company, Famitsu, it sold over 1.1 million physical copies alone. So like, wow. if you didn't even look at the digital downloads, it would still be considered a success. And generally in like Nintendo terms, in order for something to get a sequel, it needs to sell at least like 1 million generally, at least. And I don't quote me on that. I might be getting my numbers wrong, but the fact that in the first like 3 days that it sold 2.24 million in 3 days is shocking. It's an amazing game. Please play it if you haven't. I think my info dump is coming to an end. I could go on, honestly, but it's a beautiful game. I don't want to spoil too much of it, really. I think that's the only reason I'm ready to call it here. Yeah, thanks for letting me take a big old dump.
Yeah, and now I wanna go watch you build some stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Honestly, I would love to. Like that's the thing about it too, is like watching people play it online is fun. It's interesting because like I see people go through parts of the game that I've been through online, and I'm like, oh my god, they did this in a completely different way than I did, and neither of us is right, neither is wrong.
We should figure out how to do that for a Patreon Discord server live stream.
That would be a fun stream.
Yeah, very chill stream.
Yeah. So, well, anyway, thanks for letting me take a dump.
I hope everything came out okay. We don't have a sign off yet. I'm still working on it.
We're still working on it. That was kind of the we hope everything came out okay. That's kind of what we're workshopping. We need to figure out. Maybe we say it at the same time. We hope everything came out okay. I don't know.
I hope everything came out okay, and then I do that.
Yeah. Oh, Falcon did not like that.
back for the housekeeping stuff. So if you want to see where Violet and I hang out on social media, you can go to the show details, and find our social media handles. We finally have a Mix No More official account, and that is on Blue Sky. There is one post because I have not figured out that website yet. So if you want to follow us on there, and I don't know what I'm doing on there, but I'm figuring it out. Anyway, if you want to support the show, you can share about us on social media. You can share on your favorite subreddit. You can share on Discord. You can share on by yelling into a crowded room, which is basically the same as those two previous sites. You can share on Tumblr. You can share on Zanga. But sharing about the show helps us a lot. We grew our other podcast simply by relying on the word of mouth of kind people like you. We don't take paid ads, and we don't pay for ads, so we grow entirely by you telling your friends, hey, I think you should listen to this. So yeah, go tell friends. Even just telling an individual, like, do you like Legend of Zelda? Come listen to this episode. And if you would like to support the show monetarily, you can see the link to our Patreon page in the show notes. So it's called the Mix No More Patreon, and that means anything that we do at the production company that Violet and I run, you get access to any of the bonus material that we release for any of those shows. So we only have 2 shows now, but you get access at whatever tier access is at for any of the shows. So for just $1, you get access to our Discord server, which is very fun. Later this afternoon, Violet and I will be doing a Baldur's Gate 3 stream. I'm gonna smooch everybody. But yeah, if you want to support the show on Patreon, there are certain levels where you also get a shout out, like our friends Randy Lovings, Rachel Rachelson, Sewing Seraph, B. Trossler, Kelly Brennan, Spready Singh, Helen Clifford, M. Mosen, Lucy, and Fleetwood Mac Sexpants. Yeah, and if you also are looking for some peer support and some coaching, there is a link to my website where you can see what kind of services I offer. And I also have a very, very steep discount for BIPOC and trans autistic folks looking for some support. So if you're looking for support and you're trying to see if that is something that is within reach, please go click that link. I would love to talk to you. Yeah, so we will see you next time, and clever sign off.